The first drops of rain had barely kissed the deck when the lookout spotted it, a solitary bottle bobbing amidst the gathering waves. Captain Bianca Bonny, known to her enemies as the Siren, squinted into the distance, curiosity piqued by the flutter of parchment within the glass prison. Her hand tightened around the ship's wheel as she steered the Sea Serpent closer to the curious find. The salt-kissed wind played with her auburn hair, a stark contrast to the inky night sky that loomed above. Jim Hawkins, her trusty first mate, scampered down the rigging with the grace of a seasoned acrobat, snatching the bottle from the sea's grasp. He landed with a thud, grinning as he offered the prize to Bianca. "Look what the ocean's decided to share with us, Captain," he said, handing it over. With a single twist, Bianca freed the cork, letting the message within unfurl in the flickering candlelight of her cabin. The paper was brittle, the ink faded but legible. "To the worthy captain," it began. "Your quest for the kraken's treasure is not unnoticed. Heed this warning, you tread on the path of the betrayer. Should you wish to survive, seek the Scepter of Neptune's tear." Bianca squinted at the message, the salt-laced parchment whispering forgotten tales in her calloused fingers. The scent of brine and seaweed clung to it, a familiar comfort that carried the tang of adventure and the promise of danger. It was a scent that had permeated her very being since she was a scrawny 12-year-old, the day she'd snuck aboard her father's ship and tasted the freedom of the open seas for the first time. The memory washed over her like a rogue wave. The relentless sun, beating down on her freckled face as she clung to the rigging, the salty spray stinging her eyes, the wind howling a song of rebellion in her ears. It was a song she'd never forgotten, a song that echoed in the rhythmic creak of the Sea Serpent and the boisterous shouts of her crew. The Celestial Archipelago wasn't your typical pirate haven. Sure, there were hidden coves teeming with ill-gotten treasure and taverns reeking of rum and regret. But beneath the surface, a vibrant world thrummed with life. Bioluminescent jellyfish pulsed in the inky depths, illuminating shipwrecks like ghostly galleons. Schools of iridescent fish shimmered in the coral reefs, their scales catching the sunlight like scattered jewels. And in the deepest trenches, monstrous creatures lurked, their forms whispered only in drunken sailors' tales. Life here was a constant dance with danger. Hurricanes brewed with monstrous fury, their winds tearing sails and splintering masts. Colossal krakens, their tentacles as thick as ship masts, rose from the abyss, their insatiable hunger a constant threat to any vessel unfortunate enough to cross their path. But for pirates like Bianca and her crew, the dangers were merely the price of admission. The Celestial Archipelago was a lawless realm, ruled not by kings or queens, but by the iron fist of the strongest captain. Here, reputation was everything. A fearsome crew and a cunning captain could carve out a comfortable existence, raiding merchant vessels and trading plundered goods in hidden ports. It was a life of fleeting pleasures and constant peril, a life that Bianca wouldn't trade for all the gold in the world. As she reread the message, the parchment crinkled in her grip. The mention of the kraken's treasure sent a jolt through her. Legends spoke of a hoard guarded by the fearsome beast, a collection of riches that could buy a fleet of ships and a lifetime of luxury. But the message also hinted at a darkness, a betrayer, lurking in the shadows. It was a challenge, an invitation to a dance with fate that Bianca couldn't refuse. The salty wind tugged at her hair as she looked up at the sky, a canvas ablaze with the fiery hues of sunset. The crew bustled around her, their faces etched with anticipation. Tonight, under the watchful gaze of a million stars, they would set sail towards uncharted waters, towards a treasure that promised both glory and peril. The taste of salt on her lips was a reminder. This was her life, a life forged in the crucible of the sea, and she wouldn't have it any other way. Esme's eyes lit up at the mention of the scepter. "I've read about that," she exclaimed, her scholarly excitement bubbling over. "It's an artifact said to control the very seas. But the last account of its existence was centuries ago, buried in the annals of a lost civilization." Bianca studied the map laid out on her desk, the parchment whispering secrets of its own. The coordinates for the sunken city matched the location where the message had been found. "It seems our paths are intertwined," she murmured, tracing a finger along the map's edge. "We're not just hunting treasure anymore, we're in a race." The architecture whispered of a forgotten majesty. Luminescent white structures, carved with intricate depictions of fantastical creatures, rose from the ocean floor. Schools of bioluminescent fish darted between the buildings, casting an ethereal glow on the scene. Grand channels and aqueducts, once vibrant arteries of the city, now lay silent, their purpose lost to time. But amidst the beauty, there were signs of a cataclysmic event. Buildings lay in ruins, their once pristine stone cracked and blackened. The carvings on the walls depicted a terrifying scene, a monstrous tidal wave engulfing the city, the Marai reaching in vain for salvation. A shiver ran down Bianca's spine. This was not a natural disaster. This was destruction from within. The carvings hinted at a figure wielding a staff that bore an uncanny resemblance to the scepter of Neptune's tear. Was this a cautionary tale, a glimpse into the potential for immense destruction the artifact held? The crew exchanged worried glances. The power of the scepter was undeniable, but it was clear that power came at a steep price. "Who is this?" Jim breathed, his voice barely a whisper. Bianca frowned, studying the carving intently. The figure's posture radiated a sense of authority, suggesting it wasn't a mere rogue wielding the scepter. But the shadows surrounding it made identification impossible. "Perhaps it's a rival captain, someone who coveted the scepter's power and used it to destroy this city," she mused, voicing the most plausible explanation. Esme shook her head, her eyes wide with a sudden realization. "No," she countered, her voice laced with urgency. "Look at the carvings above the figure." Bianca squinted, following Esme's gaze. Above the cloaked figure, a series of symbols were etched onto the wall. They resembled glyphs from an ancient dialect, a language spoken by a long-lost civilization rumored to have dwelled in these very waters. A cold dread crept into Bianca's heart. "Are you saying?" Esme nodded grimly. "It's possible the scepter wasn't stolen. It might have been entrusted to someone from this civilization, someone who succumbed to its corrupting influence, and turned it against their own people." The revelation sent a wave of unease through the crew. The possibility of facing a foe not just wielding immense power, but also possessing knowledge of the city's secrets, was a chilling prospect. "Then this isn't just about claiming a powerful artifact," Jim said, his voice tight with tension. "It's about unraveling a past betrayal and preventing it from happening again." Bianca swallowed hard. The mission had just become considerably more complex. The scepter wasn't just a source of immense power. It was a key to a buried truth, a truth that could hold the key to preventing another cataclysm. The question now was, were they prepared to face the consequences of wielding such power, and the potential for another betrayal lurking in the shadows? The crew exchanged worried glances. The power of the scepter was undeniable, but it was clear that power came at a steep price. As they swam deeper, they approached the city center, a magnificent plaza dominated by a colossal temple, its spires piercing the water's surface. The air crackled with a strange energy emanating from the structure. It was here, according to the map, that the scepter of Neptune's tear lay hidden. The air grew thick with anticipation as the crew gathered around, each man and woman eager to know their fate. Bianca looked up, her gaze piercing the shadows. "We set sail at dawn," she declared. "We've got a city to find, a rival to outsmart, and a kraken to outwit. And I, for one, do not intend to be the one who walks the plank." The crew erupted into a cacophony of cheers and preparations. Ropes tightened, sails snapped in the wind, and the ship groaned as it readied for the unknown. The storm clouds gathered, an ominous symphony playing in the background as the Sea Serpent cut through the dark waters, her destination a beacon of mystery and danger on the horizon. Jim leaned over the map, his eyes scanning the hidden message. It spoke of a treachery that could shake the very foundations of the pirate world. He knew that their quest was about to become much more complicated than anyone could have anticipated. Yet, as he looked at Bianca, her eyes alight with determination, he couldn't help but feel a twinge of excitement. This was the kind of adventure that legends were made of. The first rays of sunlight painted the clouds a fiery red, hinting at the tumultuous journey ahead. Bianca took a deep breath, tasting the salt and promise of adventure in the air. She turned to her crew, her voice a clarion call. "We're not just after gold and jewels, my friends. We're after the truth. And I suspect, once we find it, we'll wish we'd never looked." The voyage grew increasingly perilous as the days passed. The sea grew choppy, the air charged with electricity. The crew worked tirelessly, their eyes peeled for any sign of the kraken or the rival ship. Jim took to spending hours with Esme, poring over ancient texts she'd brought from her research. They spoke in hushed tones, their heads bent over parchments covered in cryptic symbols and arcane languages. One evening, as the stars began to emerge from the indigo veil of twilight, a sudden calm descended upon the waters. The crew grew uneasy, the silence thick as tar. Bianca felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand on end. She knew the stillness was a prelude to chaos. And chaos she could handle. It was the quiet before the storm that unnerved her. It struck without warning, a tempest that seemed to be born from the very breath of the ocean itself. Waves the size of mountains reared up, threatening to swallow the Sea Serpent whole. Bianca gripped the wheel with all her might, her knuckles white and her eyes never leaving the horizon. The ship creaked and groaned, a living creature in torment. The crew fought the storm with every ounce of their strength, their faces a mask of fear and determination. Through the howling wind and the sting of sea spray, a shadowy figure emerged. The kraken. Its tentacles snaked through the water, reaching for the ship with a hunger that seemed almost sentient. Bianca felt a shiver run down her spine. The legend was real. And it was angry. The creature's eyes, twisted orbs of malevolence, locked onto hers. It was as if the kraken knew she was the one to challenge its dominion over the treasure. With a roar that seemed to shake the heavens, Bianca called upon the power rumored to be at her command. The storm grew wilder, the waves rising in a frenzy that matched her own. In the heart of the tempest, she whispered to the sea. The winds responded, shifting and swirling, wrapping the ship in a protective embrace. The kraken, baffled by the sudden change, retreated for the moment. But the message was clear, this was only the beginning. The true battle for the scepter of Neptune's tier was yet to come. The storm abated as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving the crew exhausted but alive. They stared into the deep, the water now eerily calm. They knew that the kraken was out there, waiting. And as they approached the hidden cove, the shadow of the sunken city loomed before them, a silent sentinel guarding the secrets of the deep. The tension on the ship was palpable as they dropped anchor. The rival pirate ship was nowhere to be seen, but the cove held its own mysteries. Above the water, the ruins of a once great civilization jutted from the waves like the bones of a leviathan. Below, the treasure and the scepter beckoned, their secrets entwined with the fate of the sea serpents. Bianca gathered her crew, her gaze fierce. "We've faced storms and beasts, but this is where the real test begins. Remember why we're here. For glory, for fortune, and for the truth that lies beneath the waves." With a nod from their captain, the crew leaped into action. Divers were readied, weapons were checked, and plans were made. The adventure was far from over. As they descended into the abyss, the whispers of the lost city grew louder, echoing through the water. It was a siren's song, promising wealth and power beyond their wildest dreams. But as they ventured deeper, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to unleash something far more dangerous than they could ever imagine. The dive was fraught with peril, the sea alive with strange and menacing creatures drawn by the scent of humans in their realm. The divers moved swiftly, their eyes peeled for the gleam of gold amidst the ruins. Yet, the kraken's presence was never far from their minds, a constant reminder that they were not welcome here. When they reached the city's center, a grand temple stood tall, its spires piercing the water's surface. It was there, according to the map, that the scepter of Neptune's tier lay. The divers approached with caution, their hearts pounding in their chests. The doors to the temple were guarded by stone sentinels, their faces twisted in ancient warnings. Inside, the water was murky, filled with the detritus of a civilization lost to time. The sands shifted beneath their feet, revealing a labyrinth of corridors and chambers. The air was thick with the scent of decay and something else, a faint metallic tang that suggested the presence of the scepter. The water grew murky, filtering the sunlight into an ethereal green glow. The ruins of the forgotten city loomed into view, a skeletal metropolis swallowed by the sea. Grand structures, built from a luminescent white stone that pulsed with an inner light, rose from the ocean floor. Elaborate carvings adorned the buildings, depicting creatures unlike any Bianca had ever seen. Winged serpents soared through the air, while sleek, humanoid figures with webbed hands and bioluminescent eyes toiled below. This was no ordinary civilization. These were the Marai, a race who lived in harmony with the sea, drawing their power from its depths. Their architecture reflected this symbiotic relationship. Buildings mimicked the curving shapes of coral formations, while intricate channels and aqueducts weaved throughout the city, channeling the currents like veins. As they swam deeper, they reached the city center, a magnificent plaza dominated by a colossal temple, its spires piercing the water's surface. The air crackled with a strange energy emanating from the structure. It was here, according to the map, that the scepter of Neptune's tear lay hidden. But amidst the grandeur, there were signs of a cataclysmic event. Buildings lay in ruins, their once pristine stone cracked and blackened. The carvings on the walls depicted a terrifying scene, a monstrous tidal wave engulfing the city, the Marai reaching in vain for salvation. A shiver ran down Bianca's spine. This was not a natural disaster. This was destruction from within. The carvings hinted at a figure wielding a staff that bore an uncanny resemblance to the scepter of Neptune's tear. Was this a cautionary tale, a glimpse into the potential for immense destruction the artifact held? The crew exchanged worried glances. The power of the scepter was undeniable, but it was clear that power came at a steep price. As they approached the temple, the whispers in the water grew louder, carrying a haunting melody tinged with sorrow and regret. The Marai's city was a monument to their ingenuity and their downfall, a stark reminder of the dangers of wielding the power of the sea. It was a chilling foreshadowing of the potential consequences that awaited Bianca if she failed to control the scepter's immense power. They moved quickly, driven by a sense of urgency that grew stronger with every step. And then, in a chamber illuminated by bioluminescent algae, they found it. The scepter of Neptune's tear lay upon an ancient altar, its crystal gleaming even in the dim light. It was a thing of beauty, its intricate carvings telling a story of power and betrayal. But their victory was short-lived. The air grew colder, the water around them darker. The kraken had found them. Its tentacles snaked through the ruins, seeking them out with unerring precision. Jim and Esme, waiting anxiously on the ship, felt the sea tense. The waters grew still once more, and they knew what it meant. The kraken had returned. They watched, their hearts in their throats, as the divers re-emerged, the scepter clutched tightly in their hands. The creature's shadow grew larger, the water churning as it approached. The divers scrambled into the boat, their eyes wide with terror. The kraken's roar was deafening, a sound that seemed to come from the very depths of the ocean. As the boat sped back to the ship, the kraken gave chase. Its tentacles lashed out, narrowly missing the fleeing pirates. The crew aboard the Sea Serpent readied the cannons, their eyes on the monstrous creature that pursued them. The air was thick with the scent of gunpowder and fear. They had the scepter, but at what cost? The kraken was enraged, and it would not rest until it had claimed its treasure, or their lives. The chase was on. The pirates sailed through the night, the kraken never far behind. The ship creaked and groaned, pushed to its limits as it sliced through the waves. Yet, amidst the chaos, Bianca remained calm, her hand on the scepter. In the moonlit cove, the rival pirate ship appeared, its sails unfurled like the wings of a vulture, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The pirate captain, a man known only as the Shadow, watched from the deck with a smug grin. He knew the kraken was his to command, or so he believed. The two ships closed in, their fates intertwined. The Shadow raised his hand, and the kraken surged forward, eager to claim its prize. But Bianca had a trick up her sleeve. With a shout that seemed to echo across the ocean, she raised the scepter high, and the sea around them erupted. A wall of water shot up, separating the Sea Serpent from the kraken. For a moment, all was quiet. Then, from the depths, a second kraken emerged, twice the size of the first. The crew stared in horror as the two behemoths clashed, their tentacles entwined in a dance of destruction. The battle was fierce, the sea awash with ink and the screams of the dying. The Shadow's ship was caught in the crossfire, the kraken's tentacles wrapping around its hull. The ship was crushed, sending wooden splinters flying through the air. The crew watched in awe as the two krakens tore at each other, the sea churning into a maelstrom of black ink and fury. Bianca's grip on the scepter tightened, her eyes never leaving the monstrous spectacle. The air was thick with the scent of brine and seaweed as the two behemoths battled for dominance. A familiar comfort that carried the tang of adventure and the promise of danger. It was a scent that had permeated Bianca's very being since she was a scrawny 12-year-old, the day she'd snuck aboard her father's ship and tasted the freedom of the open seas for the first time. A flicker of movement on the deck caught her eye. It was Esme, her brow furrowed in concentration as she studied a weather tome in her hands. Beside her, Jim adjusted the straps of his diving gear, a grim expression etched on his face. "What troubles you, matey?" Bianca asked, her voice laced with concern. Jim hesitated, then gestured towards Esme's book. "She's been reading about past expeditions, those who sought the scepter before us." Esme looked up, her eyes filled with a chilling certainty. "The legends speak of a darkness that clings to the artifact. A power that promises ultimate control, but at a terrible cost." A shiver ran down Bianca's spine. The thought of a dark power clinging to the scepter was unsettling, to say the least. Yet the promise of unearthing a lost civilization and claiming its treasures was a powerful lure. "There are always whispers and warnings," Bianca countered, trying to maintain a facade of confidence. "But pirates are not known for shying away from a challenge." "Aye, that they are not," Jim agreed, a hint of unease in his voice. "But some challenges leave scars deeper than any kraken's claw." He gestured towards the horizon, where a lone ship, its sails tattered and billowing ominously, cut through the waves. "Remember Blackheart Bartholomew?" A collective grimace spread across the crew's faces. Bartholomew was a notorious pirate captain, known for his ruthlessness and insatiable greed. He had disappeared years ago, consumed by his obsession with finding the scepter of Neptune's tear. "They say he found it," Esme whispered, her voice barely audible. "But it wasn't the treasure he craved that corrupted him. It was the power." Bianca's gaze drifted back to the lone ship. It drew closer, revealing a horrifying sight. The once proud vessel was now a wreck, its crew transformed into grotesque parodies of themselves, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light, their movements jerky and erratic. Blackheart stood at the helm, his once booming voice reduced to a raspy cackle. He held aloft a staff that pulsed with an eerie light, a staff that bore an unmistakable resemblance to the scepter they were about to claim. A cold dread settled over Bianca's heart. This was a stark reminder of the potential cost of wielding the scepter. It wasn't just about the dangers of the deep or the greed of rival pirates. It was about the power itself, a power that could twist even the strongest will and leave them a mere shell of their former selves. The image of Blackheart's corrupted crew burned into Bianca's mind, a grim premonition of what could await them if they failed to control the scepter's power. Yet there was no turning back now. They had come too far, and the fate of the celestial archipelago might very well depend on their success. With a deep breath, Bianca straightened her shoulders and met the crew's gazes. "We may have witnessed the darkness the scepter can unleash," she declared, her voice firm despite the tremor in her heart. "But we are not Blackheart. We will face this challenge head-on, and we will emerge victorious." A murmur of assent rippled through the crew. They may have been shaken by the horrifying sight, but their resolve remained strong. They were pirates, after all, and they weren't afraid of a little darkness. But deep down, a seed of doubt had been planted. The true cost of wielding the scepter was no longer just a whisper in ancient texts. It was a terrifying vision etched into their very minds. The Shadow's ship was a wreckage now, its timbers splintered and sails in tatters. The man himself was thrown into the water, his screams lost to the deafening roars of the krakens. The crew of the Sea Serpent had no time for pity, they had their own ship to save. Bianca shouted orders, her voice carrying over the din. The crew sprang into action, steering the ship through the chaos. The smaller kraken, weakened by its encounter with the ship, was no match for the fury of its enraged kin. With a final, thunderous crack, the two krakens separated, the defeated creature sinking into the abyss below. The sea grew calm once more, the only evidence of the battle the spreading ink cloud that slowly dissipated into the night. The crew let out a collective sigh of relief, their eyes meeting in silent understanding. They had the scepter, but the price had been high. As the Sea Serpent sailed away from the cove, the survivors of the rival crew began to surface, their faces twisted with anger and despair. But Bianca had no time for them. Her eyes were on the horizon, the next piece of the puzzle waiting to be claimed. The hidden message had mentioned a betrayer, and she knew it could only refer to the person who had sent the coded warning. But who could it be? Someone with enough power and knowledge to manipulate even the most feared creature of the deep. Jim approached, his gaze on the scepter in Bianca's hand. "What's the next move, Captain?" he asked, his voice tinged with weariness. Bianca studied the gleaming crystal, the light playing off its many facets. "We follow the trail," she said firmly. "The truth is out there, waiting for us to uncover it. And whoever this betrayer is, they're going to wish they never crossed our path." The ship sailed on, the sails full of wind and their hearts full of determination. The adventure was far from over, and the treasure of the sunken city was only the beginning. The true prize was the knowledge hidden within the scepter of Neptune's tear, and the power it could bring to whoever wielded it. But as the stars wheeled overhead, a sense of unease grew among the pirates. The scepter had a will of its own, and it whispered secrets to Bianca that she dared not share. The closer they got to their goal, the more the water seemed to resist them, the very air thick with foreboding. The crew grew restless, their whispers filled with tales of curses and ancient vengeance. But Bianca's resolve never wavered. She knew that with great power came great danger, and she was ready to face whatever lay ahead. With the scepter in her grasp, she felt invincible, the sea at her command. The days stretched into weeks, the horizon ever-changing but the destination constant. And as they approached the fabled island where the treasure was said to be hidden, the whispers grew louder. The scepter pulsed with an energy that seemed to call forth the very storms that had plagued them since they'd found it. The final battle was upon them, and it would not be against the kraken or their rivals. It would be against the very forces of nature, the ancient guardians of the lost city. They had disturbed a slumber that had lasted millennia, and now they would face the wrath of the sea itself. The island grew closer, its jagged silhouette promising both victory and doom. The sea churned, the waves rising like the hands of a giant seeking to push them back. The air was electric with anticipation and fear. The crew of the Sea Serpent knew that the end of their journey was near. But what awaited them on that forsaken shore? Would they find the treasure they sought, or would they become yet another cautionary tale whispered on the wind? The island grew clearer with each passing moment, its sharp rocks and towering cliffs a stark contrast to the serene lagoon that surrounded it. The crew braced themselves as the ship lurched through the tumultuous waters, the scepter in Bianca's hand humming with an intensity that seemed to resonate with the very heart of the storm. The closer they got, the more the air crackled with tension, as if the elements themselves were at war. Finally, the ship docked in the lee of the island, the crew's eyes scanning the shoreline for any sign of the betrayer, or the treasure. The jungle loomed before them, a dense and foreboding wall of green that seemed to hold its breath in anticipation of their arrival. They stepped onto the sand, the scepter's power thrumming through their very bones. The jungle was alive with the whispers of long-dead voices, the rustle of unseen creatures, and the pulse of ancient magic. The path to the treasure was not an easy one. It was fraught with traps and puzzles that tested their wits and their courage. Yet, driven by the siren's call of wealth and knowledge, they pressed on, hacking through the underbrush with swords and machetes. The air grew thick with the scent of decay and something else, a faint metallic tang that grew stronger with each step. The whispers grew louder, the shadows shifting and dancing around them like wraiths in the dappled moonlight. And then they found it, a chamber, its entrance sealed by a door of coral and kelp. The scepter's hum grew to a crescendo, and Bianca knew they had reached the end of their quest. But as they stepped into the chamber, the air grew colder, the whispers turning to screams. The treasure lay before them, a hoard that would make even the most jaded pirate's heart flutter with greed. Yet, amidst the gold and jewels, something was amiss. The treasure was not undefended. A figure stood before them, shrouded in shadows and wielding a cutlass that gleamed with an unnatural light. The betrayer had been waiting for them all along. The battle was swift and brutal. The betrayer was no mere mortal, with speed and strength unmatched by any pirate on the seven seas. Yet Bianca and her crew were not easily cowed. With the Scepter's power at her command, Bianca fought with a ferocity that would have made even the kraken pause. The clang of steel on steel rang out, echoing through the chamber as the two adversaries danced in a deadly ballet. In the end, it was the cunning of the pirate captain that won the day. The betrayer lay defeated, the treasure within its grasp. But as they claimed their prize, they could not shake the feeling that the true cost of their victory was yet to be revealed. Bianca surveyed the scene, the metallic tang of blood heavy in the air. The betrayer lay motionless, face obscured by shadows. A pang of unease twisted in her gut. This wasn't just any pirate. The fighting style was unlike anything she'd encountered before, a strange blend of ferocity and grace. And the cutlass, the one that had clashed with the scepter so many times, it hummed with an energy that felt oddly familiar. As Jim knelt to examine the fallen figure, his brow furrowed. "Captain," he said, his voice low. "There's no identifying mark. No flag, no tattoo, nothing." Esme chimed in, her voice a hushed whisper. "The clothes, the fabric is unlike anything I've seen. It seems to shimmer, almost like fish scales." Bianca's unease deepened. The whispers that had plagued them throughout the journey seemed to intensify, a chorus of fragmented voices, none clear enough to make out the words. But one phrase kept repeating, echoing in the caverns of her mind. Echoes of a forgotten oath. She gripped the scepter tighter, its cool metal a grounding presence amidst the swirling confusion. The treasure glittered around them, a testament to their victory, but it felt hollow somehow. The true prize, it seemed, was a mystery yet to be unraveled. The whispers grew faint, the shadows retreated, and the chamber fell silent. The treasure was theirs, but the scepter remained a mystery. Its secrets whispered of greater power, of a world beneath the waves that could shake the very foundations of their own. With their spoils in tow, the crew of the Sea Serpent made their way back to the ship, the weight of their newfound knowledge a heavy burden. As they sailed away from the island, the storm that had dogged their heels for so long finally abated, leaving them with a clear path ahead. But the journey was not over. The scepter's whispers grew clearer, hinting at a destiny that none of them could have foreseen. They had set out for gold and glory, but they had found something far more precious, a purpose that would shape their lives forever. The sea stretched out before them, vast and unknowable. Yet, with the scepter of Neptune's tear in their possession, the crew of the Sea Serpent felt as if they had only just begun to scratch the surface of the mysteries that lay beneath the waves. The future was uncertain, fraught with danger and intrigue. But one thing was clear: with Captain Bianca Bonny at the helm, they would face it all with unshakable resolve. As they sailed away from the island, the whispers grew fainter, the storm clouds dissipating like ghosts into the night. The voyage back to the open sea was filled with a mix of elation and trepidation. They had bested the kraken, outwitted the betrayer, and claimed the scepter of Neptune's tear. Yet the secrets it held were as enigmatic as the whispers that had led them there. Jim studied the ancient texts with Esme, piecing together the cryptic messages that hinted at a power that could reshape the world. The treasure they had taken was more than gold and jewels. It was the key to a lost history, a legacy that could redefine the very essence of piracy. Bianca knew that the scepter would not only grant them wealth beyond measure but also the power to challenge the established order, perhaps even to forge a new destiny for their kind. As they delved deeper into the lore surrounding the scepter, a chilling truth began to emerge. The ancient texts spoke of a time when the seas raged with unchecked fury, a time before the scepter brought balance to the deep. It seemed to act as a conduit, channeling the very essence of the ocean itself. But for what purpose? The texts remained frustratingly cryptic, filled with fragmented sentences and mythological allusions. Jim traced a faded symbol on a parchment, his brow furrowed in concentration. "It seems connected to the Guardians," he muttered. "The ones who challenged us at the entrance." Esme gasped, her eyes wide. "The Guardians, they weren't just protectors, were they? They were prisoners." A shiver ran down Bianca's spine. The whispers that had haunted them throughout the journey seemed to take on a new meaning. Were they not just warnings, but pleas for help? The scepter, a powerful tool, but one that held the key to a forgotten tragedy. The weight of that knowledge settled upon them, a heavy burden alongside the glittering treasure. Their quest for gold had become something far greater. The scepter was not just a weapon, but a key to unlocking the secrets of a bygone era. With each new discovery, they unraveled a piece of the puzzle, a story of power, sacrifice, and the delicate balance that kept the ocean world in check. The true purpose of the scepter remained shrouded in mystery, a truth they would have to unearth piece by piece, adventure by adventure. But as they delved deeper into the lore of the scepter, the whispers grew stronger. It was as if the very essence of the sea was speaking to them, urging them to return the artifact to its rightful place. The crew grew restless, torn between the allure of power and the whispers of a duty long forgotten. One night, as the stars twinkled like the eyes of 1,000 drowned souls, the decision was made. They would not keep the scepter for themselves. They would return it to the sunken city, to restore balance to the deep. It was a choice that went against every pirate's instinct, but it was the only one that felt right. The return journey was a test of their courage and conviction. The sea threw everything it had at them: storms, treacherous currents, and creatures from the deep that had never before dared to approach the surface. Yet, the scepter remained a beacon of calm amidst the chaos, guiding them back to the cove where their adventure had begun. As they approached the city, the whispers grew to a deafening crescendo. The water churned, and the ruins shimmered with an eerie light. The scepter's power was immense, and it was clear that it yearned for home. With trembling hands, Bianca climbed to the prow of the ship, the scepter held high. The crew watched in awe as she whispered an ancient incantation, the words resonating with the heart of the sea. The waters parted, revealing the path to the temple where the scepter belonged. They descended into the depths, the light from their helmets piercing the inky abyss. The city was a marvel of a bygone age, its grandeur undimmed by the ravages of time. The path to the temple was clear, the scepter leading them like a lodestone. The crew moved with a newfound sense of purpose, each step taking them closer to the culmination of their quest. In the heart of the city, the temple loomed, its entrance flanked by the petrified remnants of the ancient guardians. The air grew thick with anticipation as Bianca approached the altar where the scepter was meant to rest. The whispers grew louder, urging her onward, the sea itself seeming to hold its breath. With a final, reverent gesture, she placed the scepter of Neptune's tear back into its cradle. The moment it touched the stone, a wave of energy surged through the chamber, the very fabric of the water around them shimmering with light. The whispers grew to a crescendo, and then, as suddenly as they had begun, they ceased. The sea was at peace once more. The crew emerged from the depths, their hearts pounding with a mix of awe and relief. They had done what no one else had dared, faced the kraken, uncovered the truth, and restored the scepter to its rightful place. They had proven themselves not just as pirates, but as guardians of the sea's secrets. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, consider subscribing to stay updated with our latest stories, give us a like if you want to see more, and drop a comment below to let us know your thoughts.